of Grangemouth. I've had meetings with numerous companies that have proposals and are frankly impatient to get started. When will this money be spent? When will these jobs come to my town? Because all there is to show far is the bones of an unjust transition and industrial devastation.
Well, we absolutely have been looking at a number of proposals. I met 5 companies who are the front runners for investment from the National Wealth Fund, along with the Scottish Government Minister for Energy. There are a number of those propositions that are being taken forward, and I hope we will have an announcement to make in due course. But of course, what we've been trying to do here is not just spend £200 million on the first thing that comes along, but to find the genuinely long-term viable industrial opportunities that deliver jobs at Grangemouth, not just for a year or 2 years, but long into the future. Because the honourable gentleman is absolutely right to say that for far too long that site has been victim from a lack of planning, and it is an example of a just transition done wrongly. We want to make that different by having a serious plan for long-term jobs on that site. The NWF has brought companies to the table and will deliver an announcement on that in due course.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. While I accept the Minister's comments about Petrofac, it is a very worrying day for not just the 2,000 workers whose jobs are at stake, but for the entire North East economy in Scotland, for the oil economy. And there are 2 things which are missing, which we desperately need in Scotland. And one is investment in jobs and the skills that we will need for those renewable industries that the Minister talks about. And the other is a reform of the taxation system, of the windfall tax, to make sure it's consistent and that we have consistency in the North Sea. So can the Minister tell us what this government is going to do about those things?
Well, can I thank the Honourable Lady? She's right, of course, that any announcements like this are worrying for those directly involved, but obviously for the wider community, and I entirely recognise that point. She's right to say that investing in the jobs of the future is critical. We've worked with the Scottish Government, because we do work with the Scottish Government, to deliver joint funding for transition support so that workers can get the direct skills support they need to move from an oil and gas job into a renewables job. That's really important. But we do need to see much more in upskilling the next generation who can take advantage of the jobs that we'll create in the clean energies of the future. On the question of taxation, I'm afraid that's a matter for the Chancellor.
Graham Downey.
Much, Mr Speaker. My own constituency in Dunfermline Dollar has SMEs and large businesses working in renewables, working in oil and gas, solar, onshore wind and offshore wind. Does the Minister agree with me that some of the outbursts today we've seen from the opposite sides, from both the Conservatives and the SNP, will do nothing but undermine confidence that those companies face? And furthermore, can he please reassure me that he is working extensively with colleges in Scotland and with employers to make sure that we do see that transition from skills from oil and gas into renewables, so that people in my constituency can take full opportunities of the investments this government is making?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right that there are huge opportunities coming. And look, when I say we should be proud of the history of oil and gas, we should also be really proud of what that industry is doing to transition into the future. We need to do much more to make sure those jobs are delivered now, but certainty and confidence that the plan isn't going to change overnight is critical for how we get private sector investment into the UK to deliver on these jobs. It's also why it's so important we look at skills in the round. And look, I do have to say, despite outbursts today, the SNP in Holyrood and this UK government are working closely on making sure those skills opportunities are delivered. Would I like that to go further? Of course I would like that to go further. I hope we'll have a change of government and can make that happen. But this only works if we have a serious approach to recognising the challenges and building the jobs of the future and making sure people can take advantage of those opportunities right across Scotland.
We urgently need to restore confidence and stability in our oil and gas sector, or we'll be here again and again as more and more businesses suffer and more jobs are lost, whether that's in my Gordon and Buchan constituency, across North East Scotland, Scotland as a whole, or the UK as a whole. There are oil and gas and energy jobs everywhere in the UK. The future of Petrofac's 2,000 skilled and expertise staff, but also the indirect jobs which rely on them, are now at risk, and are at risk based on the Petrofac being able to find a buyer for its North Sea assets. Does the Minister think that the job of finding a buyer has been made more or less likely, given what the government has created, in the industry words, being the most unstable fiscal environment in the world?
I have to say, Mr Speaker, I have enormous respect for the Honourable Lady, but this is not the day to be talking down this particular company. Now, she can make the wider points about this government's policy, and I totally recognise that, but this is a hugely important moment not to undermine a successful and growing company, to make sure that the suppliers and companies and customers of Petrofac continue to support that business, because it is operating, as of today, as normal. And I think it is incumbent on all of us to make sure that that continues to be the case. We are obviously making sure that we're working closely with the company to make sure that outcome is delivered, because she's right to say about the wider impact. But those 2,000 jobs have continued as normal today. The supply chain jobs that rely on those 2,000 jobs have continued as normal today. And any suggestion to the contrary is just not correct.
Christine Sullivan.
Does my honourable friend agree with me that it is important to speak responsibly, with care and accuracy around the successful UK arm of Petrofac, because to do otherwise will only serve to undermine the business and job security that we all want to see across this House? And what steps is he taking to ensure it has a long-term future in the UK?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. And look, of course, I come to this House and rightly expect to be challenged on this government's policies, and a back and forward that is as strong as we have had is important. But I think in this one instance on this company, separate from any view that members might have on the wider policies of this government, it is important that we come together where we can and say this is a strong, successful, growing company. It is in all of our interests right across this House to talk up the importance of this company continuing to be successful, so that a buyer is found or another commercial resolution is found, so that those jobs can be maintained. That's surely in all of our interests.
Kirsty Blackman.
Every single one of us has been criticising government policy, not criticising Petrofac, not criticising the expertise and the workers at Petrofac, not criticising any of the workers that are working in our oil and gas industry. The Minister says that he's been spending time in Aberdeen. Does he have any idea how it feels to be in Aberdeen just now? Does he have any idea how this is just another hammer blow that is coming? And it is because of the government's policies. It is because of the fact that there is this massive gap. Skilled workers in the oil and gas industry will just go abroad. They will go away elsewhere. It does not matter whether or not we retrain them. The jobs are not there for them right now. What is he going to do to plug this gap? What is he going to do to keep these skilled workers in Scotland, in Aberdeen, in these islands, and not drive them away?
Well, look, I take her first point with a pinch of salt after her second point, where she said that this comes as a hammer blow to the community. There is no hammer blow. Those jobs have been protected. And there are 2,000 workers today waking up doing the same job as they were doing last week. So I take a bit of a pinch of salt with that point. She's right, of course, to say, look, I am in Aberdeen. I don't pretend. She's an Aberdeen MP. Of course, she hears from her constituents much more than I am when I'm there. But I've made an effort to be there as often as possible to hear the concerns, but also to recognise that that is exactly why we need to move further and faster than we have done for the past 14 years of the previous government, 18 years of the Scottish Government, to put a credible plan in place for the future of those jobs. That does mean investing in future jobs, but also making sure that the processes are in place so people can take advantage of those jobs much more easily. Passporting, something which was stuck in the mud for years, is now being delivered because we helped to unlock it. Now, there's a lot more to do, and we'll say that in the coming weeks when we publish our Future of the North Sea plan, but we are the ones driving forward investment that creates the jobs of the future, and I'm afraid other parties, and I didn't until today count her party as one of those, are harking back to the past rather than recognising the jobs of the future need to go hand in hand with good, well-paid oil and gas jobs in the short term.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I thank the Minister for his statement and the confidence he is showing in these workers. Absolutely. We've heard from the SNP. The difference between Labour and SNP just now is that SNP do want to scrap the Energy Profits Levy, but they don't know what they're going to replace it with. They just want to replace it with something that's fairer. Does he agree that, does he think this is the kind of leadership we need in the oil and gas sector?
Well, I say to my honourable friend, we recognise that the Energy Profits Levy will come to an end. We've consulted on what the future of that looks like with industry. It's a matter for the Chancellor to obviously outline tax policy as it is standard practice in this House. It's not for me to say that. But I would say, look, there is a broader question here about how we make sure we're driving forward investment, and talking down the investment in carbon capture, hydrogen, offshore wind and the supply chains is not the way to drive forward the jobs of the future alongside these critical, important oil and gas jobs that will be with us for decades to come.
Sir Bernard James.
Mr Speaker, Can I ask the Minister, why does he refuse to issue new licences for the exploitation of new gas fields and new oil fields in the North Sea? Because that is what the industry would like, and that is what the country would like, because we'd like a stronger balance of payments, we'd like more tax revenues for the exchequer, and we'd like a future for the North Sea oil industry. What is the point of choking off our own North Sea oil and gas industry when we have to import those fuels from other countries?
Well, we will respond to the consultation question on the future of licensing in due course. It was our manifesto commitment on which this government was elected to not issue new licences to explore new fields, but we will support existing licences and existing fields for the lifetime that they exist for, and that remains our position. What we also have said, though, is that is about how we manage the future of the basin, which has been in decline for 20 plus years now. We hit peak oil and peak gas in 1999 and 2000 respectively. We have been in transition for a long time. That means investing in the industries that come next alongside oil and gas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And following on from that question, can I just say how reassured I am that it is this minister looking at this, fighting for those jobs for those people in Aberdeen, but also acutely aware that the previous government did not take full account of what impact the Shadow Minister raised Rosebank. We now know that Rosebank would create 50 times more climate-harming gases than it originally admitted to the previous government that it would do. And we know that the climate crisis is one of the biggest drags on growth that there is. So can I ask the Minister just to set out, I know he is as committed as we all are to protecting jobs and protecting the planet. What more can we do within our supply chains to support the work that he is doing and get those growth and get the just transition that this country desperately needs without Rosebank?
Well, I think the House will understand that I won't be drawn at all on applications that are currently in for decision, so I won't comment at all on that specific application. But I would take the broader point. It was raised earlier that the net zero economy is growing 3 times faster than the economy at large. It is our economic future. I was at the G20 in South Africa recently, where ministers across the world were talking about the opportunities of the clean power transition in their own countries. This is the economic opportunity of the 21st century. It's also how we deliver on climate leadership, which does still matter, contrary to what opposition politicians might now think. But it is also only right if we deliver it with a genuinely just transition for those workers that have powered our country for the past 60 years. We have seen where transitions have not been done well. The previous government failed to put in place any kind of plan. We're not going to do the same. We're going to deliver a plan that delivers a just transition and also our economic future.
Ms. Logan.
Mr. Speaker, I hear the Minister's reassuring words, but surely he can understand the worry of the workers waking up this morning to the news that they heard. And it's not just warm words that are causing the problem, it's policies. It's the energy profits levy, it's the ban on exploration. And it's not just me that's saying this. Here's a list of some of the people that are concerned. The Port of Aberdeen, Robert Gordon University, the North Sea Transition Authority, the Tony Blair Institute, the Scottish Affairs Committee. So what is the Minister going to do in terms of addressing these policy problems?
Can I thank him for his tone, and just to repeat that I absolutely accept the point that he makes. Of course, I'm saying today that we can be absolutely clear about the viable future of these 2,000 workers, and we should be positive about it, but that does nothing to those who might be worried about it, and of course I recognise that point. I just think it's also important that we talk up the future potential of this company. On the point on EPL, which I'm just going to come to, look, we accept that the EPL will come to an end. We've consulted with industry on what the future of that looks like to make sure that price spikes do result in the Treasury gaining some value from that. I think that's a principle that his party and mine are agreed on. That's rightly a matter for the Chancellor to take forward. But I think if he is in favour of a tax cut for oil and gas, it is quite important that he says where will that significant amount of revenue come from to fund the public services that he and I rely on.
Mary Glendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's mention of tiebacks in a recent consultation earlier this year. But their development is important because it reduces costs and extends the life of existing critical infrastructure. However, many existing hubs are reaching the end of their life. We may miss the opportunities that are in front of us. So will the Minister look at tiebacks as a pragmatic step to help aid the transition?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, who is always a great champion for this industry, and although we often talk quite rightly about Aberdeen and the north east of Scotland, she's also right to champion her own community, which has a significant number of oil and gas workers in it as well, and I always welcome her straightforward challenge to me on many of these points. I'm not going to get into the detail of the response to the consultation, which we'll publish in due course, but we've been really clear that we want a credible long-term plan for the future of the North Sea. That's why we consulted on a range of factors, not just the future licensing position, and we will come to a pragmatic position on what the future of the North Sea looks like.
Julian Lewis.
How many years does the government estimate we shall have to keep importing foreign oil and gas as a result of not being allowed fully to exploit our own supplies?
Well, perhaps I would switch the question back to him and say, for how many years have we already been importing oil and gas? Because this comes to the fundamental point here. The party opposite wants to pretend that in July last year somehow we switched to becoming a net importer of oil and gas. That is not what happened. Over many, many years, his party oversaw that transition. And look, I recognise the geology of the basin means that to some degree there would not have been different decisions if we had been in government. That's the nature of the basin. What we could have done differently was see that the transition was happening and deliver the economic opportunities with what comes next. That's what we're going to do.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister share my concerns at the way that Reform and the Conservatives deny the reality of climate change and deny the fact that the best way to protect energy jobs and to protect people's jobs is to follow the Green Jobs Plan? And does he also agree with me that nuclear, such as Heysham 1 and 2 in my constituency, and if I get my way, new nuclear at Heysham, are vital to the Clean Energy Jobs Plan?
Well, I was going to say this might be a note of consensus across the House, but then, of course, I remembered the SNP have this ideological objection to nuclear in Scotland, so they won't benefit from the economic opportunities that come from thousands of well-paid, skilled, trade unionised jobs in nuclear. But we do believe that there is a long-term future for nuclear. That's why we announced funding for Sizewell C. It's why we concluded the SMR programme. It's why we have been working with the US government to bring forward private funding partnerships to make sure we're building the latest technology here in the UK. It comes with thousands of jobs. It helps deliver on our energy security long into the future, and it also helps tackle the climate, because this party does believe that the climate crisis